You keep explaining yourself and still feel misunderstood. What if the problem isn't them? It's that you're trying too hard to be understood? Every explanation quietly weakens your power without you realizing it. The moment you stop explaining, everything about how people see you begins to shift. Watch closely, because this might be the mindset change that rewires your entire life. Number 1. The invisible prison. Why you feel forced to explain yourself. You learned early that silence felt unsafe, so you started explaining just to feel accepted. Approval became currency, and over-explaining became the price you paid for belonging. Being misunderstood once hurt enough to make you over-communicate forever. That habit didn't come from confidence, it came from emotional survival. Every long explanation you give is your nervous system trying to avoid rejection. You're not sharing clarity, you're trying to prevent conflict before it even happens. People who had to prove themselves as kids often justify everything as adults. It feels normal to explain, but it's actually a learned defense pattern. You weren't taught to be heard, you were taught to be understood at any cost. That's why simple decisions turn into long explanations filled with unnecessary details. Even saying no feels heavy, like you owe the world a reason. So you soften your boundaries with words, hoping people will accept them. But the more you explain, the more you signal uncertainty. And people don't respect uncertainty, they question it. Over-explaining invites others to challenge what should have been final. You think you're building understanding, but you're opening doors for doubt. Confident people don't rush to justify, they trust their decisions silently. They don't feel the need to convince anyone of their choices. Because their authority comes from within, not from others' approval. Your long explanations slowly train people to take you less seriously. And without realizing it, you give away your power in every extra sentence. That guilt you feel after saying no is not truth, it's conditioning. It's the echo of a past where being accepted meant overperforming emotionally. Breaking this pattern will feel uncomfortable because it challenges your identity, but that discomfort is proof you're no longer living in that invisible prison. Number 2, the psychology of over-explaining. Every time you over-explain, you quietly signal that your decision alone doesn't carry enough weight. You think you're being clear, but what you're really doing is asking for permission. Internal authority says, "This is my choice," without needing approval from anyone. External validation says, "Please understand me so I can feel okay." Confident people don't rush to fill silence. They let their decisions stand on their own. Short answers aren't rude. They're signals of self-trust and certainty. Over-explaining begins where self-trust ends. It's not about communication, it's about emotional safety. Your brain is trying to protect you from rejection and conflict. So it adds more words, more reasons, more justifications. And for a moment, that reduces anxiety. But it also teaches people that your no is negotiable, that your boundaries can be questioned, pushed, even ignored. The more you explain, the more space you give others to doubt you. Power isn't in how much you say, it's in how firmly you stand. People don't respect explanations, they respect conviction. When you over-explain, you lower your perceived value in the interaction. Because certainty feels like authority, and hesitation feels like weakness. Silence, when used correctly, creates pressure and presence. It forces others to accept your decision instead of debating it. The discomfort you feel when you say less is the withdrawal of validation addiction. You're not losing control, you're reclaiming it. Confidence is not loud, it's precise and minimal. The strongest statements are often the shortest ones. When you stop over-explaining, your energy shifts from seeking approval to owning your reality. And in that shift, people don't just hear you differently, they treat you differently. Number 3, how over-explaining makes people respect you less. Every time you over-explain, you quietly signal that your decision might not stand on its own. Confidence is not loud or detailed. It is short, clear, and final. People don't measure your intelligence by how much you say. They measure your certainty. The more words you add, the more doubt you create in their mind. High-status individuals don't rush to justify, they state and move on. When you explain too much, you invite people to question what didn't need questioning. Authority is not built through explanation. It is felt through calm conviction. If your answer needs defending, people assume it is weak. Over-explaining turns a simple decision into a negotiable situation. And once something feels negotiable, people start pushing boundaries. This is where respect begins to quietly disappear. Because people trust what feels solid, not what feels uncertain. The moment you start defending your choice, you hand over control of the conversation. Now you're no longer leading, you're reacting. And reacting is never a position of power. Strong individuals are comfortable being misunderstood. They don't chase clarity at the cost of their authority. Silence, short answers, and stillness create psychological weight. That weight makes people think twice before challenging you. The less you try to convince, the more convincing you become. And the moment you stop explaining, respect stops being requested and starts being given. Number 4. The power shift. What happens when you stop explaining? Silence is where your power begins, not where your voice disappears. The moment you stop explaining, something shifts inside you that people can feel without words. Energy changes first, long before your life does, and others respond to that invisible shift immediately. Calm silence sends a stronger signal than 1,000 justifications ever could. When you don't rush to explain, you show certainty without needing approval. Certainty is what people respect, not over-detailed explanations or emotional defenses. The less you say, the more your presence speaks for you. People sense when they can't control you anymore, and that's when manipulation loses its power. You become harder to question because you stop inviting unnecessary doubt into conversations. Every extra explanation used to be a door, and now you're choosing to close it. Closed doors create boundaries, and boundaries create respect without asking for it. Respect begins where over-explaining ends, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is not weakness, it's the old version of you losing control. You're not being rude, you're being clear, and clarity doesn't need decoration. Your decisions start standing on their own without needing constant validation. When you stop explaining, your anxiety slowly loses its grip on your mind. You begin to feel lighter because you're no longer carrying other people's opinions. Freedom isn't loud, it's quiet, steady, and deeply grounded in who you are. People notice the shift, even if they can't explain why you feel different now. Silence is not weakness, it's controlled power. And once you feel it, you'll never go back. Number 5. Practical scenarios. What to say instead of explaining. You don't need better explanations, you need stronger boundaries. Most people don't respect words, they respect certainty. Over-explaining doesn't make you clearer, it makes you negotiable. The moment you start justifying, you give others permission to question you. Confidence sounds like fewer words, not longer sentences. I won't be able to make it is complete. It doesn't need decoration. When you add reasons, you invite opinions you never asked for. Silence after your decision is where real power lives. High-value people don't rush to fill uncomfortable pauses. They let the moment breathe and others adjust to them. If someone feels awkward, that discomfort is not your responsibility. You were never meant to manage how others feel about your choices. Short responses create boundaries without conflict. Long explanations create openings for manipulation. Every extra word weakens the authority of your decision. Calm, clear, and brief. That's the language of self-respect. People test limits only when they sense hesitation. When your words are final, the conversation usually ends faster. Respect is built when you stop negotiating your own life. The less you say, the more your presence speaks. Number 6. Why it feels so uncomfortable. That discomfort you feel right now is not weakness. It's the moment your old identity starts losing control. For years, being understood became your safety. So silence now feels like something is being taken away. The mind doesn't like losing control, so it pushes you to explain just to feel stable again. But stability built on constant explaining was never real confidence. It was emotional dependency. You learned to explain because at some point, not being understood felt like rejection. So now every silence feels like you're risking being dismissed, ignored, or misunderstood again. That's why your body reacts first. Tight chest, fast thoughts, the urge to say more. But that reaction isn't truth, it's conditioning repeating itself. Growth always feels like rejection at first because your old self is being replaced, and your brain interprets that change as loss, even when it's actually progress. You're not losing your voice, you're learning not to misuse it for validation. Silence feels uncomfortable because you're no longer controlling how others perceive you, and that's exactly where real power begins. When you stop managing opinions. The strongest presence in any room is the one that doesn't need to be explained. When you don't rush to fill the silence, people start paying closer attention to you. Your words become heavier, sharper, and more respected because they're no longer overused. That uneasy feeling you're sitting with right now is your personality being rewired in real time. Every moment you resist the urge to explain, you reclaim a piece of your self-respect. You stop negotiating your worth and start standing in it without permission. That uncomfortable silence you're afraid of is the exact space where your new power is forming. Number 7, the final transformation, becoming unshakable. When you stop explaining yourself, something inside you finally settles into certainty. Decisions become faster because doubt no longer needs an audience to feel valid. You begin to trust your instincts without needing approval to confirm them. The constant pressure to be understood slowly fades into quiet confidence. You realize most explanations were never about clarity, but about fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being seen the wrong way. And once that fear loses its control, your energy becomes calm and grounded. People start noticing a difference, even if they can't explain what changed. You speak less, but your words carry more weight and intention. Silence becomes a strength instead of something you rush to fill. You stop chasing approval because you no longer depend on it to feel secure. Your presence shifts from seeking validation to holding quiet authority. The need to prove yourself disappears, replaced by simple self-trust. Conversations feel lighter because you're no longer defending your choices. You allow others to misunderstand you without trying to correct everything. And in that space, you discover a deeper sense of personal freedom. Respect begins to come naturally without forcing or demanding it. Because confidence isn't loud, it's consistent, steady, and undeniable. You become unshakable not by controlling others, but by understanding yourself. And the people who require explanations were never meant to understand you.